TKBS Nation, we back at it again, another live edition. It's a great day if you're a Wolverine fan. Marisa and I surely are happy to bring this to you. We're breaking down Michigan's win without Coach Jim Harbaugh in the blasphemy that took place on Saturday morning with the news of him being suspended. CJ Stroud, man, just keeps making plays, keeps making noise, beating the Bengals today. Maybe he's a front runner for MVP. We'll see. And Clippers chaos. Clippers are now 0-4 with the addition of James Harden. Marisa here, Monty Moss. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. We just want to say and address that we were correct from the last segment when we made our quick pick about Michigan and Penn State. Michigan going into a hostile environment in Happy Valley. But of course, there was going to be some controversy as Michigan and Coach Jim Harbaugh were flying into Pennsylvania. Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, decided, you know what, we're not going to have Harbaugh on the sideline, even though we're still investigating the sign stealing thing. But that did not stop the Wolverines from winning and beating the number 10 Penn State. Number 3 Wolverines got it done 24-15. Coach Sharon Moore took over the reins as interim, and even though that J.J. McCarthy did have a low on throws and everything, I think he got 60 yards. Blake Corum, he powered his way through 26 carries, 145 yards, 2 touchdowns. We finally saw a Donovan Edwards sighting. 22 yards, he ran in for a score. Literally, the run game was so effective from the tail end of the first half and all the way through the second. I think JJ's completed 8 passes, and we did not see another pass from him in the second half. And it was the flurry on social media, especially with Michigan fans getting upset because he was not opening up the playbook and having JJ make these complete passes as he did in the first half. But when you got a running game in weapons in Corum and in Donovan Edwards and, his name is slipping my mind, the wide receiver that was on there as well. When you got all those weapons there on the offense, why not utilize them if you know that you trust your quarterback, you're going to connect with your players that are going to make the run. They're very quick. They're going to score, especially Blake Corum that just went off and took off as he did with 2 touchdown scores. We told people this is going to be close. It's probably going to be ugly, but Michigan gets it done and improves to 10-0, 7-0 in conference play.
Michigan versus everybody. That is the slogan for the remainder of this year. Rather you have Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines or not. Let's just face it, this was a personal type of game. Everybody was locked in from start to finish. I mean, just a credit to Michigan's defense. They held Penn State to 15 points after the previous week. They put up over 30+. They held Penn State to 0 points in third quarter. Defense got it done. But this is just old school type of ground and pound type of game. Michigan ran the ball over 20 straight times after the second quarter, and they just pounded and pounded and pounded Penn State. Now, am I the type of person to agree with this? No, because this type of play is not going to get you to a national championship. But I understand the type of environment and the type of play calling that was put in place. They couldn't stop Blake Corum. They couldn't stop Edwards. It was a nice 1-2 punch that we got to see. Both players got in the end zone for it, which is very, very happy for those two.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something that just is going to carry on into next week when we face Maryland on the road, which would be another tough, hostile game. But, as we wait to see things unfold, I do expect Michigan to put an appeal out to the Big Ten commissioner as well as to the Big Ten on lifting this up for Jim Harbaugh. But we have the players, we have the staff in place to kind of carry it without him. Of course, he'll be in the background during the week on practice and film to implement, the system that they'll put in place for Maryland this upcoming Saturday. But, of course, we would love to have Jim back on the sidelines, and we'll wait for all the frenzy to unfold. I think he's being dealt the bad hand. I think it's a rush to judgment on the Big Ten's behalf to sit here and say, all right, man, we're just going to suspend you for the remainder of 3 games. It's just a lot of things that just not making sense to me. I don't want to speak on those things just yet because we don't have the facts. But I will say what they've done to Jim Harbaugh so far this year with all the crazy allegations and suspensions, all the media news that's been surrounding us, it's just total BS to me. And I look forward to seeing what's going to play out this upcoming week with the Big Ten commissioner.
I appreciate every single one of these players too, Monty, being focused and not letting the noise, the outside chaos distract them from what is the prize, which is, again, winning the Big Ten Conference, going to the Big Ten championship game, and being in that top 4 for a possible chance, again, for the national championship. So their focus and their drive during that game, it proved a big, huge staple and pretty much letting the naysayers know that, we are for real. We're not listening to the chaos, and we are here to stay up in the top four. As we said, CJ Stroud, man, I mean, he's doing a big thing with the Houston Texans. They've made a statement win on Sunday afternoon, 30-7 at Cincinnati versus the Bengals. That snaps a 4-game win streak in Cincinnati. CJ Stroud, he is putting up numbers. That game, he put up 356 yards, 1 touchdown. He led, you would think it was like the last 93 seconds of the game, led a winning drive to set up Matt Amendola to connect from 38 yards, and they stayed in the lead, and they ended up stapling that win. He is, in your opinion, do you believe, the front runner for MVP?
He is. He is the most exciting player or draft pick since Joe Burrow. Say people can make the argument. I know I will. But just the way he's been playing, his composure, just what he did throughout the game. I mean, second and third quarter, making plays happen, putting points on the board. And this is all on the Cincinnati Bengals and their loss. We just talked about them last week on their primetime game against Buffalo. And, of course, carrying that momentum after beating a good Bills team, which I'm sure will be in the playoffs as well as Cincinnati. But this is a loss to be the Bengals that you cannot afford to have, especially at home. And all the credit to CJ Stroud. I mean, this team is riding around him. He does a lot of things off the field with the team, team dinners, team outings to make that camaraderie a little bit better, make that locker room a little bit better. And there's a lot of hurdles that the organization has to make. But right now, they're over 500 for the first time in many years since we've seen. We know the past that they've been through with Bill O'Brien and Lovie Smith and so on and so forth. But I'm happy for the organization. I'm really happy for CJ Stroud. The kid's balling. He's playing his tail off every week. The attention to detail shows. He's very disciplined in the pocket, and he just makes the right plays when it need to. And this is what he did on that final drive, taking the team all the way down for his kicker, Amendola, to kick off the game-winning field goal to seal the deal to go up, 5-4 in the record books is something that's pretty cool. And I just expect CJ to keep playing like this. And they're just getting better. You see it week in and week out. I mean, the record may not show for it. I mean, they're 2-3 on the road. But what they've done these last 3 games particularly has impressed me, and I hope they can carry it on throughout the season.
Can they make a statement in the AFC South? You got the division-leading Jags that they still need to face later on this month.
Yeah.
You have the Browns that possibly could, challenge them on Christmas Eve. Do you think that they could literally, and this is me just throwing this out here, I mean, you got a first-year coach in DeMeco Ryans. You got, CJ Stroud in his first year. How much noise can the Houston Texans make? You look at this schedule and the 2 games that I said, they could possibly, if not, win the AFC South.
It's definitely up for grabs. I mean, Jacksonville got annihilated today by San Francisco at home, so they dropped to 6-3. I mean, the Texans right now are at 5-4, second in division, with Indy 5-5. Indy, we know their season's pretty much done and dusted with, Anthony Richardson being out for the rest of the year. Tennessee's at 3-6. There's no chance in hell they're coming back. So right now, the AFC South's pretty much between Jacksonville and Houston. Now, right now, Houston's playing its best football right now, and it can benefit them in the long run. But Jacksonville, in the same hand, can also flip the switch also and play their best football, because we've seen similar signs from it also early in the season with Doug Peterson calling the plays for Trevor Lawrence. So right now, I think it's all for Houston to win, but also this division's all for Jacksonville to lose, because, right now, the way things are standing right now, of course, with Jacksonville being ahead, you cannot afford to keep losing it, especially if the Texans, with a win like today, can build on that, run into maybe a few game win streak before, we hit that kind of borderline in the season and later on in the weeks, week 10, week 11. This is something that can be one of those questionable decisions where maybe Houston gets into the wild card, or maybe Houston wins the division. We don't know yet, but that's the exciting part. So, it's definitely something that this is what I'm going to have my eye on throughout the remainder of the year between these 2 teams. And I feel like each week both teams just got to go out there and win, because if you don't, you literally have, Houston with 1 loss behind you ready to go. So, it's something that I look forward to seeing from this division for sure. And I think Houston's got a shot 100%.
I agree with you. And while they're celebrating and living their whole entire best sports life and figuring out how to continue to evolve and improve each week, to shift gears over to the NBA and figure out what in the world is going on with the Clippers. Since they have tamed James Harden, they now drop 0-4 as they lost. They lost to the 1-8 Memphis Grizzlies, 105-101. Monty, this is a team that was, and fans, that was excited about attaining James Harden, who wanted to get out of the whole situation with the Sixers and that whole mess that happened. And now the fruits of the labor of all the money that was thrown at him, sitting at 0-4 since they brought him over, 0-5 before he was brought over. Who is to blame for all this? Is this squarely go on Harden? Is this a team effort? And how in the world can they turn around and do something very quickly? Because their next game is a tough one on the road at Denver.
I don't really think there's anyone to particularly blame. Of course, we know, when you have a new acquisition, it takes time for things to get adjusted. It takes time for players to get accustomed to it. But for me, I think this move is sort of a suicide mission for the Clippers. I mean, what Ty Lue has already had in place prior to James Harden's arrival with circling, talent around, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and then Zubac. But the person that has been hurt the most since his acquisition of James Harden has been Paul George. I mean, Paul George has, in his last 3 games, his numbers has been atrocious. I mean, literally his worst game of the year against the Knicks the other night. He's definitely been the most player to get impacted by this, but everybody's numbers has dropped from Kawhi Leonard to Paul George to even James Harden, of course, but just mainly those 2 guys, they're stars. Russell Westbrook, including that picture also, their numbers have been dropping with the James Harden move. I mean, it's kind of, when you're watching them play, they're still trying to get adjusted to James Harden's game, but, for me, as James Harden says, like, he's not a system player. He is the system. Seeing him playing off the ball, it just looks weird to me. I mean, you figure him in Philadelphia, it was him and Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Tobias Harris. You didn't really have the star-studded player, but now shifting gears, you go into L.A. and you have Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Russell Westbrook. So those are 3, ball-dominant ball handlers, already, and then factoring, the way you play and your style. It's kind of hard if you're Ty Lue to kind of revamp your system around to accommodate James Harden because, when you're watching the Clippers play, it's just not himself. I mean, he needs to be in a system where he's a guy, he's going to be the number 1 scoring option, the ball's going to be in his hand 90% of the time. Yet, I'm not going to get anything from him on defense because defensively he doesn't play any D at all. So it's kind of frustrating, and it shows, when I'm watching the Clippers play, just even tonight, losing 105-101 at home. I mean, this is the Grizzlies' 2nd win of the year, but for the Clippers to fall to 3-6 is something that I didn't expect to start the season. They had a lot of good buzz going into the season, and just their defense tonight was just terrible. I mean, to give up 100 points to a team that doesn't have a number 1 scorer or number 1 option is just pretty much beyond me. But this is something that the Clippers need to go back to the drawing board and figure some things out because they got the defending champions coming up in a few nights, and if you're the Clippers, defensively you just have to have some type of foundation. They don't have the foundation besides Kawhi Leonard start holding the pack. Paul George has been committing on defense just as well as Russell Westbrook. But there's no one to blame, Marisa, when I'm looking at this. I'm just saying to myself, how does this make sense long term? How is James Harden with these pieces going to make sense for the Clippers as we get later on to the season, if not the postseason? I know, they traded for him and got him out of Philadelphia because he wanted his way out of Philadelphia and he got it. But if you want out and you come into a system like the Clippers, you got to show me you want to be here. Show me that you're committed to this team. Show me that you're going to commit on both sides of the ball, specifically on defense. Show me that you can be a team player. And so far in these 4 games with James Harden and the team, he has.
I think the thing that's very disappointing, and I don't know if you're going to agree with this or not, is that I look at this team and I was like, okay, who's going to step up and be a leader?
Right.
We got people that, occasionally will score. You are correct when the scoring for those key players that you had mentioned has gone down. But what I'm not seeing from the outside looking in is who's the person that's actually going to be the leader of this team. And so far, since the acquisition of Harden, I haven't seen it yet. I mean, What are your thoughts on that real quick?
You're spot on. I mean, it's something that, prior to James Harden's arrival, we knew who the leaders were on this team with, Paul George being a vocal leader, Kawhi being a vocal leader, even Westbrook finding his way back in year 2 right now with the Clippers. He's found his niche also. So they have a lot of vocal leaders, but they need a captain in the locker room, somebody that's going to take charge and say, hey, follow me into war. We'll figure it out each and every night. And I know it can be a little bit frustrating for Ty Lue and his staff because it's not easy to acquire somebody like James Harden, especially with all the news that surrounds him being canceled to a locker room, him not being a team player, and everything that's happened, in the front office with Philadelphia and what, Daryl Morey has said about James Harden, which some can say that it can be true. I certainly agree. But there's a lot of layers to this team right now that just has to get fixed, has to get corrected immediately. I mean, you sit at 3-6. Of course, there's a